Welcome back to Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel on 9 PBS. Clarity, understanding, and empathy. Common values for those on the front lines charting a bold way forward for African Americans in St. Louis. Stay tuned as we talk to these changemakers, visionaries, and overcomers. I'll ask the questions you want to hear and get the clarity we all need about the issues we face. That's next on Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel on 9 PBS.
Today on Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel, we catch up with retired Captain Ron Johnson to revisit his time in Ferguson after he was appointed to lead the protest security during the civil unrest following the shooting death of Mike Brown Jr. We talk about why he marched with protesters, how he assessed his work in the community, and how it has changed him. That's next on Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel on 9 PBS.
Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel is supported in part by Midwest Bank Center, Orvin and Latrice Kimbrough, the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation, and the St. Louis Development Corporation.
Welcome back to another episode of Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel. And as we start every conversation, I give you some assignments, some requests, and one of those is to become a subscriber. I did an interview recently. We call it our Exit interview series with former Mayor Tashara Jones and her father, Vervis. And just from watching that interview, probably I'm going to overestimate, but maybe upwards of 200 people became subscribers after watching that interview. So maybe after watching this conversation, you will do the very same thing and become a subscriber. After you do that, even before, click the like button and then leave a comment about this conversation, what you thought about it, what you wish I had asked, what you're glad that I asked. You're going to enjoy this one, as I know I will as well. He made history. He is a familiar face to many who watched the Ferguson uprising, the Ferguson protests, the Ferguson riots unfold over 10 years ago. Captain Ron Johnson marched with the protesters, and we'll ask him about that as well. He joins us now on Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel. Welcome.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So when I think of you, I see you forever in that incredible Missouri Highway Patrol uniform, marching with the protesters. Take me to that morning. Had you decided the day before or the morning of, I am going to do this? And why did you make that decision?
No, I decided right after the press conference with the governor when I found out that I was going to be in charge of Ferguson, not knowing that I was going to be put in charge and not really having a plan. And I decided I had to go back to Ferguson and try to march with the protesters.
What was your goal in marching with them?
My goal was to connect, let them know that I was a part of them. This was my community too, and that they weren't only marching for themselves, they were marching for everybody in our community and our region.
You have had enough years to pass now, and maybe your feelings have changed about finding out. You used the words, when I found out that I was going to be in charge. Have your feelings changed about how that happened?
No, I don't think my feelings have changed, and I think things happen for a reason, and so that's the way that I've always looked at it.
How did you feel when you found out I'm going to be in charge of this?
Well, I was surprised.
Yeah.
Caught off guard. But I think life prepares us for moments, and I think I was prepared for it.
When you got out there, was that the first time after being told at the news conference, being informed that you were going to be in charge of the response from the state and local officials? What did you feel when you got out there and you see this mass of people?
Well, I knew it was a big task, but I was humbled, and I knew that I had a charge. I had a responsibility, and so I got out there, and there was a weight. I mean, you feel an extreme weight on your back because I knew that everybody wasn't going to be excited that I was put in charge, and that was on both sides. That was the protesters, that was the rioters, and that was law enforcement. And so I knew that a lot of eyes would be watching every step that I took.
There has always been a difference in assessment, in opinion, in relationship between certain communities and law enforcement. As a black man, how long had you been in Highway Patrol at the time Ferguson occurred?
About 26 years, 25, 26 years.
Long enough to have had an experience or two showing up in your uniform. How were you treated generally as a member of law enforcement as a black man? Did that ever even come into play really for you?
Well, they come into play throughout my career at times. People would challenge it, especially people of color would say, hey, how can you wear the uniform? Are you really being fair? You know, you're a part of the system. And so it was something that I had experienced before in my career. And so it wasn't the first time, but the magnitude of it, the enormous amount of people and comments I had never experienced and couldn't have imagined.
I have been told by friends and family and people who watched it unfold that they felt you did an excellent job. Now, these are people who are friends of mine, family members. We may have similar political views or societal views. There were those who felt upset that you did march with protesters. So those who felt you did a good job, those who are upset you marched with protesters, how do you assess your performance?
You know, I think that in the moment, I gave the best that I had. I think I made decisions based on the whole community, not based on race, but the whole community and what we all needed. And so when I look at that, I think when you give your best and when you give your best intentions, and then I think you're okay. And I feel like I did okay. Do I feel like I could have done some things better? Well, sure, we always can. But I think when you give your best, I think you can sleep on that.
As one who was working in talk radio at the time, I was a news anchor, talk show host. There was a moment where, and I'll be transparent, I should say, that I thought about leaving my industry. It was very difficult to cover, to hear what maybe my colleagues were saying, what callers were saying. And it changed me in a way. How did it change you?
Well, I think, you know, when people challenge what you do or when people have a difference of opinion, I think it makes you better. I think it makes you think. And so there were a lot of comments. There were a lot of negative comments, but there were positive comments. But I think the negative comments also made me think. They made me, in some respects, I think, become more proactive and think out of the box. And so I think that we have to balance both. But I think Ferguson made me a better person. I think it made me more compassionate, more understanding, but more willing to stand up and speak without fear of what would come next.
Did it push you closer to retirement than you would have otherwise?
No, not at all. I think it let me know why I put that uniform on, why I wanted to put that uniform on in 1987. So I think it just redefined for me the meaning of why I wanted to be a policeman.
And why did you want to be a police officer in 1987?
To impact our community, to be a face in our community, and also bring understanding. You know, as a young man, I had an encounter with law enforcement that didn't go in a positive way. And I remember my mother telling me that if you want to change something, then maybe you ought to become a policeman. And so I think it really brought that home, and it brought that conversation with her. And I think I did that. I think I accomplished that over my career.
And certainly over the years, we have seen, and this is happening in a lot of industries, in education, in healthcare. There's a nursing shortage, there's a teacher shortage, and there is a law enforcement shortage. What do you say to those who maybe were considering it and have no desire to do it now?
Well, I think it's a rewarding career. I think it's something you have to want to do. I don't know if, even when I became a policeman, that it was the number one thing that people were wanting to be. But I do think if you want to impact, you want to change, and you want to do something that every day you get up has meaning, not only to you, but to those that you meet, then law enforcement is an amazing career.
I always joke that I had 9 hours of psychology when I was in college. And not that I'm a psychologist or a therapist or anything like that, but looking into the human psyche, the human condition, I have a theory as to one reason why. When we began, and we always have debated police brutality, use of force, presence, demographics. We've always debated that in the industry, right? That if we had responded to it differently, to those complaints differently, maybe we would not be here today. And I have challenged, Captain, I have challenged friends of mine who are absolutely pro law enforcement, who back the blue, if you will. I have asked them, do you really support law enforcement if they are not getting all that they should receive? Maybe they are not getting all the therapy that they should. Maybe they are not getting the real support that they should. Talk to me about the support you believe law enforcement needs that it really isn't getting, or am I wrong in that regard?
You know, and I'll just look at here in our region here. I think law enforcement gets a lot of support.
Right.
I really do.
I would agree.
I think that sometimes as law enforcement officers, sometimes our willingness to accept that becomes a challenge.
To accept the support?
To accept the support, especially when we start talking about the mental health support and some of those things. Because I think, sometimes you put that uniform on and you think that it makes you some different, that you can't hurt and you can't show that you're going through tough times. And I think that's an expectation that when a law enforcement officer is out there, that he or she is strong enough to endure, that their day is always going perfect, and it's not. And I think when we allow people to express themselves, their fears, their hurt, the things that are going through, then I think we can have a better police force. I think they can serve the community better. And I think for me doing Ferguson, I think I decided I was going to show people who I was. And I talked about my family. I talked about the things that I had gone through. I talked about some things that we had experienced in our family. I remember my mom calling me saying, hey, one of my church members was at a meeting and she said, you said this. Why are you telling everybody our business?
Oh.
and I said, I'm not, but I want people to understand how much we're all alike, how much I am them.
What does that kind of support look like is on a policy level, on a day-to-day HR level in agencies? What does that look like?
Well, I think those at the top have to recognize when someone is in need, and those at the top have to understand mental health issues. There has to be time when someone is if it's my day to come to work and if I'm having a bad day, well, maybe there's another assignment that I can take, and it doesn't become a negative for me for my career. That if I'm having an issue, it doesn't impact the growth of my career. And so I think it starts at the top. And I think we just have to make sure we've got those right support mechanisms in place. Law enforcement is tough. There's tough days. In our city, we're trying to make changes in our city,
right, with
crime and some of those issues. And so it's tough. And we have to make sure that the men and women have the support they need.
You once said that you lost friends following and even during your service in Ferguson. Are they still ex-friends, former friends? And have you reconciled that since?
Have not reconciled since. But I don't know if now that I don't hold a grudge, even though we haven't talked and those fences haven't been mended. I think if I saw them, I wouldn't avoid them, and I could have a conversation, and I would, of course, ask, how are you doing and what's going on in your life? I think grudges are something I've never tried to hold on to.
You talked about this city. You were your consulting firm, security firm, was hired to assess, I believe, downtown crime. Are you still a part of that? This contract ongoing with the city?
It is.
And what does the contract call for you to do?
So I work with the Downtown City Improvement District and just assess behavior downtown, come up with strategies, work with the different groups, whether it's law enforcement, or political or business groups, and just make sure that downtown's a safer place to live, work, and play for everyone.
And by city, I mean, of course, the city of St. Louis. I have heard a variety of people say, because young people have been congregating downtown, those mass groups of young people has been diminished, still happens occasionally. So people have said, this is about parenting, and that's an ultimate societal issue. how does a law enforcement security consultant, how does the city, how does a downtown security business association confront that part of the issue, if you believe that is a part of the issue?
I think it is a part of the issue. Parenting is a part of the issue. But I also think having activities for our young people to do and participate in is part of the issue also. And so I think there's a mix. And so I think that, we see some kids that are coming downtown, and I'm sure they're coming from great families and families that have rules and structure in their daily lives. And these kids are coming down because they have nothing to do. And they're not necessarily coming down starting any kind of bad behavior or being disruptive in any way. But then we have the other kids that, of course, parents aren't in their lives and having that structure. And so there's a balance. But I think to say that every kid that comes downtown is a part of bad parenting would be unfair. And so I think we just have to make sure we balance and we have those activities. Growing up here in the city, I remember when I grew up, there were a lot of things you could do, and a lot of places you could go and be entertained. That's just not the case in our region right now for our young kids.
Do you think that the decision, and maybe this came from your consulting work, the decision to fine parents, this was the 4th of July specifically, and I'm not aware whether it is an ongoing policy to fine parents whose kids are downtown after a certain amount of time. Does that help, or is that a piling on methodology?
Well, that wasn't my decision, but I think it brings parents, or they get involved, and the judges or the court system can have a chance to speak with those parents. And I've heard the Mayor Spencer talk about this is an opportunity to maybe give some other resources to the parents that come in. And so I don't know if it's as much about fining the parents from a cost standpoint, but bringing them in to where you can talk to them about resources that may help them in what they're trying to do.
How does your work change now that the St. Louis Police Department is under state control?
It doesn't impact the work that I do at all.
And what do you think about the St. Louis Police Department being under state control?
I'm going to sit back and wait and see. I think that it would be unfair to judge it right now on the surface, but just kind of wait and see. But I think we want to make sure that this city is the best that it can be. We want to make sure that our police force is the best that it can be. And so I think it's a wait and see for me.
And I realize that the conversation about the police force not being at full capacity, I don't know many police forces that are at full capacity around the country. Is that correct?
That's true. There's not many. And so I think it's important that when you're not at full capacity, that you make sure that you're using what you have in the most efficient way. And so I think administrators, it's a tall task, but they just have to make sure they're being efficient and planning around what they have in the most efficient and effective way that they can.
We had Cedric the Entertainer on the podcast, and one of the things that we discussed was the special that the two of you did during the Ferguson uprising, following it, I should say. Do you have any other work? I think he was sort of tap dancing about what you guys may do in the future.
Well, it was important that we did that at the 10-year anniversary. I brought a lot of people together. And so I think it's always there that there could be some things that follow.
You're tap dancing too, just like Cedric did. What was your goal in that 10-year anniversary special?
Well, I think the goal was to, I think it was the time that we should never forget.
Right.
I think it's a time for us to see how we can grow. But I think 10 years later, the emotions were different. And I wanted people to see this city and myself and Mike Brown's father and all those involved and see who they were now when our emotions were different and we were kind of calm and all the chaos and all the news reports weren't going on. And maybe look at themselves.
Right. The Ferguson Commission, the however many pages it was, and all the decisions that it hoped it hoped that elected officials would make. I think not a lot of them were made. Do you look back and say we have changed for the better, or we have a long way to go?
Well, I think when that commission was put forth and a lot of people were asking what I thought, my comments weren't positive, because a lot of times when we have these commissions, and it's been our history, whether it's here or across this country, a lot of meetings, you create this document that goes on a shelf.
Right, it's right up
and
there.
collects dust.
And it's collecting dust.
Yes.
And it's still an active thing, but it's just collecting dust in your mind.
Yes.
That is sad to say.
It is, and I don't think it had the impact that it sought to have.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think you sometimes you create these commissions in the heat of the moment. Most of those people in the commission have moved on, and no one was there to carry it forward.
The phrase political will, just will in general, if there's no will, then nothing changes.
That is correct.
Talk to me about what we've heard from the FBI recently. By the time this airs, the FBI's release of the latest data on violent crime will be maybe a month or so old. And what we're seeing around the country is that violent crime rates are going down. Murder rates are going down. Specifically, other crimes are not, but that violent crime rates are going down. What do we attribute that to in 2025?
For me, I'd have to see those numbers and look at them a little closer, because I think sometimes we redirect or we create our own math and we put things in different categories, and they can impact numbers. Because I think if we would all say that if we're listening to our news reports on a daily basis, most of us would say that those numbers aren't going down.
Because we see it.
Because we see it and we hear it. And so is it perception or is it reality? And so I think I'd have to have a closer look at those reports.
Well, as one who was 20 plus years before you retired from the Missouri Highway Patrol, you know full well what your life was like in the force with the agency, the reality of that versus what you would see, in a 5 o'clock newscast or a 6 o'clock newscast. Those things are very different.
Right.
Generally are very different. So you'd have to dig into the numbers to see, but just when you hear that numbers are down, do you have hope in the direction that we're headed?
I do have hope, because I think a lot of people are working hard to do that. I look at the policemen in our region, the ones that I see across this country, and I tell you, you can go through our city, and I know sometimes our police, and then we'll talk about the St. Louis city, they get a hard time. But I can go and I see some great work being done. I'm downtown on the weekends, and I see policemen out of their car walking around, the beat kind of like it used to be. And some of these guys are doing it on their own. It's not because their sergeant or their captain is mandated, but they're out the car and they're walking and they're talking to people. And so I do see hope, and I think the young officers give me that hope with their energy that I begin to see across St. Louis and across this country.
We do have a new mayor, of course, as everyone knows. The work that your firm is doing, are you meeting with her team on a regular basis?
Haven't yet. Hope to. I know she's in her office has been dealing with the tornado that
right.
we experienced, and so that hasn't happened yet. But hearing some great things that she has on the horizon, and so I think we'll see where we go and how our city moves forward.
What do you do, and do you do something every year for the anniversary of Michael Brown's death? Your role in the Ferguson uprising?
I don't know if I do anything in particular every year, but over the last few years, me and Mr. Brown have been in contact, or at least we contact each other. And so I think for me, though, I sit back. It's a day that I kind of sit back and reflect. and make sure it's a day that I don't have filled with any business or work where I can just kind of sit back and in that moment.
I do want to leave you with this question because you said something early on that, of course you would have done some things differently. People would wonder, well, what would you have done differently? And the number one answer, I would put a quarter. I'm not a betting woman. I can risk a quarter.
All right.
Maybe you wouldn't have marched. That's what they would say. That's not what you would say. But what would you have possibly done differently?
The only thing that I think I would have done, well, one thing I would have done different, when I left that press conference, the first thing I did is I went to the march. And I think I was put in charge to lead the men and women in uniform, and I would have went there first and told them that I was honored to lead them, and then I would have went to the march.
That's a reflection of leadership, I think. That's you speaking as a leader.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I'm so appreciative of you coming and reflecting on this time. It has forever changed us. Would you say it has forever changed you?
It has, for the better. And I tell people all the time, if this was that moment again in time, and they ask who would want to be in charge, I'd raise my hand again.
Before I let you go, Captain Johnson, there's a question that I ask every guest on the podcast, and it is based on the name of the show, Listen St. Louis. Who do you think we should be listening to?
I think we have to listen to each other. I think that's where we fail, that we don't listen to each other. And that's just not someone that we call a friend. Sometimes that's that stranger. For me, I get a chance to go around downtown. I go to the encampments where they're unhoused, and I listen. And so I think sometimes we listen to someone that's different than us or going through something that's different than we go through. I think that's how we become better. And that's no matter who you are. And our leaders need to do the same.
Well, I thank you so much for coming and joining us on the podcast. And everybody still calls you Captain Ron Johnson.
They do. Except my mother, but everybody else, yes.
Captain Ron Johnson with us on another episode of Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. And all you have to do is click the like button, then click the share, then leave a comment. I know it sounds like a lot, but it is not. I promise you. Just go through those couple of things and let us know that the conversations we're having on the podcast are ones that you are enjoying and actually learning something from, because that is one of our main goals here at 9 PBS is education and to change the narrative. That's the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And we believe that having conversations with leaders such as Captain Ron Johnson will help us to, in fact, do just that. So thank you again for joining us for another episode of Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel on 9 PBS.
Listen St. Louis with Carol Daniel is supported in part by Midwest Bank Center, the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation, and Orvin and Latrice Kimbrough.